Okay, we are ready.
Okay, I'm going to call the Human Affairs Committee to order on December 11th at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Alderman Wilshire,
Here.
Alderman Karen, Alderman LeBrun,
I am here.
and Alderwoman Melizzi Golia. I am here. Alderman Lopez contacted us and indicated he was not feeling well and will not be here this evening. And also in attendance, we have Carrie Skena from Urban Programs, who will be joining us at the Horseshoe.
Thank you. Okay, public comment. I see no one. We have a communication from Carrie Skena, UPD Manager, regarding the Citizens Advisory Commission for Community Grant Application updates. Carrie, would you care to join us, please?
And while she's joining us, I would move to accept and place on file.
Motion before us is to accept and place on file. So can you give us an overview of the changes that we're looking at in the application?
Sure. So the new commission has been meeting over the last month or so, or 2 months. And as this committee is aware, the ordinance passed a couple of months ago restructured, so it's predominantly new commissioners, a couple of returning, which is helpful to have that historical knowledge. And they've been doing a lot of work to get ready for this year, and in preparation for that, reviewing the application that the nonprofits would use to apply for these funds. So we looked at a lot of examples from other communities and considered those and came close to replacing Nashua's application, but ultimately the group decided that they would like to keep the application that has been in use for the last few years, but just revise it slightly. So the bigger changes that they put in this year, a lot of it was just clarifying some of the language and updating format. So where format was changed, it's noted in the comments, like moved this from another part or things like that. So on the cover sheet, which I sent an updated version, and you should each have a copy of that. I noticed in my original memo, it was the wrong cover page with all the track changes and edits that were happening. I lost track a little bit. So we kind of restructured the front page to make it a little bit more, flow a little bit better as far as who's eligible to apply. That did not change. When the deadlines are, and then what to submit. So this year it will be an electronic submission only. They can submit by paper, but it's not required this year. Last year, both electronic and paper were required, and that caused a lot of confusion, I think. So this year it should be electronic unless they're unable to, and they could do paper. They added, the group wanted to add in the IRS 990 form. A lot of them went and looked that up on their own in prior years and found that to be very useful information. We clarified the audit requirements, saying that the management letter should be included, and then the addition was if the agency was not subject to an audit, that they would like CPA-reviewed statements, at least, as a minimum, because not all of the entities who apply meet thresholds to have a full audit done.
What is that threshold, do you know?
Well, on the federal side, they actually increased it recently. It was $350,000. I want to say it might be in the $500,000 range. If the agency expends that amount in federal funds, they must do a full audit. There may be other requirements. I'm just familiar with the federal ones. They wanted to, if the agency is applying using a fiscal sponsor, to include that agreement if they have one. And then they talked about the follow-up reports, and attached to the application or at the end of it was an example of the follow-up report that they'd like to use. They've been using one for the last several years, but it didn't really capture a lot of information, and it wasn't very well structured. It was just kind of an open-ended, tell us what you did with the money. So some agencies gave very good information. Other agencies, it was kind of limited. So the group had a hard time knowing if they had received funds in the past, how were they spent, and what was the success or challenges that they might have faced. So going through the application, again, a lot of it was, we added in a program name because they could be applying for multiple programs.
Can you tell us where you are? These pages aren't numbered, so it's a little hard to follow along.
Okay, so at the start, so the cover page ends with some notes about the information sessions that are coming up next week. Those are both at the Arlington Street Community Center on the 19th and 21st, both at 1 o'clock. And we are strongly encouraging any potential applicants to attend that, just because it is a new commission structure. The application review process will be different, and then it's just good to have that opportunity to have them ask questions about applying. So on the, I guess what would probably be the second or third page, it's headed City of Nashua Citizen Advisory Commission for Community Grants application at the top. So again, adding the program name was the only change there, and then moving things from one part of the application to the other. On the following page, it's titled Part 2, Agency Information. I'm just reiterating that they need to attach the audit or the CPA reviewed statements. And then updating some of the language within it. There's a box under Agency Revenue, Box E, where, and throughout the application, anywhere that said review and comment was changed over to the correct name. But that in the previous application, the way it was worded was a little bit confusing, and not everybody knew what it was even asking for. So they updated the language to say that if they were receiving funding from the City of Nashua other than through this process, to please identify that. They could be getting like art grants or, CDBG or some other city support, and that's where they wanted that to be identified. Moving on under the section about assets and liabilities, just specifying what the fiscal year should be, that the agency should enter the start and end of their fiscal year, so not a huge change, just clarifying.
So, okay, so you're not asking them to provide this in the city's fiscal year format. You're asking them to provide it in their own fiscal year format.
Right,
Okay.
to better match their budget, and that wasn't always clear in the past, so the commissioners sometimes weren't really sure what time period they were looking at.
Thank you.
And I've come to learn that there's a lot of different fiscal years out
Right.
there.
Oh, yeah.
Under Part 3 program budget, where it's highlighted, it just asked that that they don't use acronyms when referring to some of their funding sources, that they spell it out. On the bottom, this is a ratio to show, and there's actually an error in here that I didn't catch on my first go around. The hashtag sign should be a division sign. But it's basically asking them to do the percentage of funding. So when requesting the advisory commission funds or the city funds, what percentage of their overall budget for that program, and that just gives them the layout of how to calculate that formula. And they thought was an important piece, not only for themselves to consider, but also for the agencies to see if they're predominantly seeking city funds for the program, or is it a small portion, or, what does that ratio look like? Part 4, organization overview. Again, this is just, a lot of this is, it didn't change, it just moved from where it was in the application. So just asking them to go over their history, talk to us about the program. And anywhere where it's highlighted, where it added new questions under, so under agency history, the 2 or 3 most important services the agency provides. And I believe that was a question that was asked in another application that the group looked at, and they liked that and wanted to add it here. Under Part 5 program overview, they were just in another section, and they were moved to here. And don't focus too much on the formatting, because once these changes are approved, it will change the spacing and all the comments will go away because some things were numbered and bulleted and shouldn't have been. And then Part 6, sustainability, is a whole new section. And again, that was something that came from one of the other applications that was looked at. And these are some of the questions that commissioners used to ask the agencies when they came in for that interview process. And they would talk to them about, what are the future plans for funding of the program? If the city funds run out, how will you sustain it? Things of that nature. So that section was new and added
This
in.
whole sustainability section is new?
It is, yes.
Yeah, I have a question or two about that. You want to take a question about that?
Sure.
So under, I agree with one, if your program is ongoing, what are your future plans? Share specific examples on how your agency collaborates with other programs or agencies to address the needs of the people you serve with the program. If you don't collaborate with other agencies' programs, please specify why. Where did that come from?
This whole section, I believe, was from just a different application that they had looked at, and they, like I said, they just liked those questions and sections. I don't know if Alderman Karen can speak to that a little better.
I think some of it has to do with when we met with the agencies. These were typical questions we kept asking, especially some agencies that have duplication. So we try to verify if they're working together to get the best bang for their bucks. Some were not. So we felt that this was a good question to see. Are you collaborating? Because if we're not going to have these agencies within our deliberation, the more information we have, the better off we'll be before that starts. Now, because it's new, because this whole process is going to be new, you're obviously trying to get the most from the application. Maybe it'll be reduced, maybe we'd have to add something, but we have to start, we felt we had to start somewhere, and those of us who have done the meetings with the agencies, these were pretty important questions that were constantly asked by the different groups, so.
Well, I understand your point where if you have 2 or 3 organizations that are providing food pantries, that kind of thing. But if you have an agency that does a specific thing that doesn't collaborate with other organizations, is that a negative on their application, or is that?
No, because I'm sorry.
No, Alderman
I'm
Karen.
sorry. I think the thing is that there are probably some agencies that stand alone. So you want to know that. That's the only agency that provides that particular service.
Right.
But if there's a couple that work, that are doing the same, like a food pantry, because we do have those, if they're all working together so that they're not going to the same individuals and they're expanding, I think that needs to be known because that they're getting more for their money, So I don't think that's a weight, but you understand that an agency that is the only one that's doing that would have some significant value as would a group, So, it's a question that we felt was asked a lot.
Okay.
And we worded it, it may not work out, but
It may.
we're trying.
It may.
Yeah, it may, so.
Alderman LeBrun.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Isn't one of the biggest problems we've always had in government the lack of communication?
Sure.
Different agencies purposely do not communicate with each other. They don't want each other to know what they're doing. The same with people in this case applying for grants. They want that separate. They don't want anyone else to know what they're doing. That's the way government has been working for years and years and years, and that's what has to cease.
Well, I don't know that that's the whole, every program. I think there are some that collaborate very well together. I just was kind of.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
There
no.
are exceptions to everything.
Yeah.
But overall, there's a lack of communication, and it's done on purpose.
Okay. Alderwoman Melissa.
Yeah, I would just say that, to Alderman LeBrun's point, if I'm the only agency delivering a service in the city, if my service is of value, I would hope that I'm collaborating and have interagency agreements or MOUs, memorandums of understanding with other agencies, because whatever resources I have, I would hope I'm extending to other constituents or clients of other agencies. And so I understand that food pantries, if there are 3 different food pantries, how are they collaborating? What kind of communication do they have between each other to, if they don't have one thing, but they know someone else has that food, so they can redirect people who need their general service to them. But at the same time, if I'm doing, I don't know, parenting, and someone comes to my food pantry, and in conversation, I realize they might benefit from some parenting education, and I'm the only show in town, do I have some sort of way for the food pantry to communicate and send their client to me? So it concerns me that there might be an agency in town that has services that we think are important enough to fund, and their donors think are important enough to fund, but they aren't collaborating with other programs who may provide totally different services. So I see the collaboration not only within like programs, but within very different programs. So we're providing that net for individuals. So I think it's important to know if there's collaboration. And if there isn't, I would just say, well, why aren't you collaborating? Like, how do other people find your resources? That would be my question, my thought.
Some agencies provide a very specific
Mm-hmm.
service that is not widespread. It's not, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
No.
just want to put it out there that not all agencies that provide human service can do that. I mean, maybe to some degree they can. I don't know.
May I just follow
Sure.
up?
Yeah.
And I agree with that. And if they provide a very specific service and they're the only one in the city or in the region or wherever, if I have that client and they may only serve 1/10 of the population who receives services, and I happen to have 1 out of the 300 clients who has that specific need, is there some collaboration or some process in place for me? So I look at collaboration not being just sharing of resources, but do we collaborate with, how do I get my client into your program? You know, how do I move them over there? Is there,
Maybe your client doesn't fit in their program.
but if I have someone who I know meets their criteria.
Okay, all right.
If I know you provide this very specialized service, and I all of a sudden, for the first time in my 20-year existence, have someone who meets that criteria, do I just say, oh, here, go see Lori Wilshire? Or does my social worker go, oh my gosh, Lori Wilshire Incorporated has this program, and this is how I refer someone. So I can say to them, you need to go to Lori Wilshire Inc., and when you go there, this is what she'll need. And that to me is a level of collaboration,
Okay.
even if it's only at the point of referral.
Okay. Alderman Karen.
Okay, I think we went off track. The point of this was because of some of the agencies that we had dealt with similar things. The question was asked, do you collaborate with XYZ company? We would not know of an outside agency that deals with something else that we could send our client to. We're more concerned with the 30 or so agencies that come to us requesting money, and we see a similarity with what they're providing for their clients. And the question to them, the agency is, do you collaborate with ABC company? Because you do similar things, or do you send people? We don't know about the other agencies that exist that don't apply for this application. We're only looking at the people who are here and applying and trying to make sure that everybody works together. I understand Alderman Melissa Gola's premise, but we're not out there looking for other agencies to send people to. We're just looking at the agencies that have applied to say, here we are, you do a similar thing, do you ever talk to each other? And as Alderman LeBrun says, some do, some don't, but we have found that a lot of them do reach out, and then you see that collaboration, but they have to do it themselves. We can't force them. We're just trying to tell them that there are other agencies that are doing similar. Can we all work together, for the common good of the community at large, so.
Alderman LeBrun.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Or Madam President, whatever.
Very Wilshire Inc.
Alderman Karen's correct. However, any program the city appropriates money to, the city has a right to know if they're duplicating efforts or what each program is doing so that we don't duplicate it.
Right.
So that our money gives us the proper bang for the buck, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Alderman Lisa Golia.
Yes, Alderman Karen, I totally understand what you're saying, and I think that's important, so we know where there's duplication or not. I'm looking at what it says here, specify how your agency collaborates with other programs to address the needs of the people you serve. So if I'm the soup kitchen and I know someone who comes to me is going to be evicted, do I have a way of referring them to someone for housing? I guess that's how I'm reading that. So I think it's really important that agencies who have like missions have a plan to not duplicate. I also think that knowing that any of these agencies can be the first point of contact if someone needs another service. I think it's important for agencies to let us know how they collaborate within the community. And in fact, if I were filling this out, that's how I would look at it.
Alderman Karen.
And I would think that most agencies would have a list of other agencies that they could refer their clients to, because they only deal in XYZ, but this agency deals with something else. It would be like you say, the soup kitchen. They would know to send someone who's homeless to probably the housing authority or Harbor Homes or to the welfare office. I'm sure they have that,
do.
So
They absolutely
so
do.
yeah, so that would be that kind of information. But we don't want them to give us their whole life history. We just want to know if that collaboration is there and if it's working. That's all.
That's fair. No, and we do have a good nonprofit delivery system here in the city. They meet monthly at the Continuum of Care. They talk about cases that might go from one agency to another, that might need different services. But I do feel that now and again, you run across one that just provides a specific service.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I think it's fair.
Okay.
I think it's fair. Carrie, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't think the question was intended to have a negative connotation. It's almost an opportunity for the agencies to talk about who they collaborate with in the community. And if they are an agency who is a standalone or maybe even for confidentiality reasons can't do that type of collaboration, the the specify why would be where they could explain that. And again, that could even be a highlight where they say, this unique service is what we provide and why we don't collaborate, or, because of restrictions, why we can't. So I don't think it was intended to be a negative question and more an opportunity. And it's also an opportunity for the agencies to do a little bit of self-reflection on, why are they maybe we're not collaborating enough, or if they're asking us this, maybe we should think about it a little bit more.
Okay. Alderman Malizia,
Yeah, I would just agree with you, Carrie. I think it's a time, as Alderman Wilshire said, most agencies are members of the continuum of care. So you would almost expect to see that there. And then really to reflect on, well, is there something else we should be doing? Or maybe even to say to you, we've been thinking about doing this because we realize this is what we have to do. Or to say, and beyond the continuum of care, we have some formal agreements with these specific agencies around, be it referral or service delivery or sharing of resources, whatever. And again, it gives them something to think about. Is there something else we can be doing?
Okay, all right. Next subject.
Okay, so that pretty much brings us near the end, where it's titled Agreement to Grant Terms. And on number 2, it just said you're agreeing that your organization is a nonprofit 501c3 federal tax exempt organization, and then it went on to list different examples of the types of entities, and the commissioners thought that was just a little bit confusing or redundant and unnecessary, because the basic requirement is 501c3 nonprofit, and it could just end the sentence there.
I agree with that.
So they wanted to remove that. Number 6 was just redundant because it's part of the checklist of what you need to attach. And then adding in the checklist just one more time toward the end, just again to drive home the point of what is required, so that they can aim to have a complete application package when they're submitted. And then the signature line was just updated to reflect that it could be an electronics, or it would be an electronic submission. Again, if they're using a fiscal sponsor, it needs to be signed by that entity separately. So that would probably be a scanned separate page just showing that signature, but they did want that. They wanted to know that the fiscal sponsor was aware that the sub-agency would be applying for the funds. And that was really it. So, I mean, there aren't, any earth-shattering changes in there, I don't think.
What?
Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Karen pointed to the follow-up report. So again, it actually used the model from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, and it just asks the questions a little more specifically to glean the information that the commission found valuable, as far as not only how the funds were spent, but tell us a little bit about what happened with them both, not just the successes, but also any challenges. What did they learn? I mean, some of these programs are ongoing, and it might not be anything really new, but sometimes entities are coming in to start new programs. So the commission would want to know, did you have any lessons learned? What are your future plans? They wanted to know a little bit more about leverage. The previous follow-up report didn't have anything about that. And then just comparing the budget, from what they asked for to how the funds were spent. And then the last question, question 7, was feedback, and the commissioners all really liked that part of it as well, having the opportunity to get some feedback at the end of the cycle.
Well, I like what's going on. I like the fact that we have a new commission, that it's, these people are going to be coming back year after year. We're not out recruiting new volunteers every year. I'm pleased with that. I like the idea that, the application seems to be more streamlined, more in line with what I think as a city we should be doing and should be asking. I like that, it's your application's due by this deadline. If it's not there, sorry, we're not going to chase you for paperwork. I think we've been hand-holding a very long time with some agencies that, most donors wouldn't accept. You either get your application in complete by the deadline, or you don't get funded this term. And I kind of like that. I think it's time we did something that, held people accountable for their requests. Alderwoman Malizia-Goya.
Yes, I also like this. I think it looks great. And many of us sitting here this evening were here when we started this process a number of years ago. And I just think that we need to acknowledge the work of all the previous members of the commission, because we did not get here with just the blink of an eye. There was a lot of hard work. There was a lot of discussion both around this horseshoe and at your meetings, and probably privately with people to look at how we tweak this. And to get here where here's the deadline, it's in or it's not in. And we went through a few years of, well, wait a minute, I don't understand this, and refining this. So thank you to the current group, but also I think we need to acknowledge all of those individuals who have served, who started this process and who we've worked with to get here. I think it looks great, and it certainly reflects, I think, the level of professionalism in our community agencies, as well as helping them be in line with applying for federal and state grants or private grants, and just moving this whole process forward and taking it to another level. And Carrie, thank you to you for working with all of those many individuals on the commission, as well as all of us.
Alderman Karen.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. It's been like 3 or 4 years since we started this process. And we've gotten to the point now where these agencies have to understand the application is their request. There's no more calling and saying you're missing this, or complaining because you didn't have enough time. We're not gonna have a face-to-face. So it was important for this group to put everything in place, questions that we knew were asked before, to be part of this. And Carrie's worked very hard, I mean, she got this put on lap because I kept insisting it should go to someone, that is a permanent structure within the city that knows applications and knows how to do it. In the group of people we have are very dedicated. A lot of them work with agencies, have worked with former agencies. And I think they've put a lot of thought into this. And when Carrie mentioned that we should have some real meetings with the agencies for them to ask the questions and to have the commissioners there as well is important, and is an vital part of this community. I mean, you're talking about $500,000 or so that's going out to these agencies to help us. So I think it's great, but also I think it's important that we thank all those volunteers who spent hours, even if they only had 5 or 6 applications. It was still time-consuming for them to read these and then come and sit for 4 hours and have discussions with the agencies, and then try to figure out how they best give out the monies for the agencies to do the best work that they could. So I think that's a important part of that, because we do have the commissioners now, but we had those 30 volunteers coming out in the snow and cold weather and what have you to do this. And I think we have to thank them publicly for all the work that they did. And I think they did a lot of work, and Carrie kept sending back drafts. But I think it's coming together, and obviously come April, I'm sure we'll have some changes, but it'll be nothing but good things,
I agree. Thank you, Alderman Karen.
Thank you.
One of the things I want to just touch on is the fact that, the process is changing. The committee membership and makeup has changed. And I think that we need to make sure, and I know you will, to the nonprofits who are going to get the application and say, oh, I don't get a chance to come in and speak. But I understand that you have a couple of sessions lined up to meet with the applicants, so that they're not, this isn't just thrust at them, that they'll get some technical assistance from you. And I think that's very important. So thank you for that. And those are on December 19th and 21st at 1 PM?
Yes.
Thank you.
And those are open sessions. And then Urban Programs is available for technical support on an as-needed basis. If there's any concerns about putting the application together, how to submit it, anything like that, what the requirements are. And, and just to reiterate, the past commissioners, before it was restructured in the last couple of years that I was involved, did, pour over this and put so much work into it to try to make it have a lot of integrity to the process. And I'm happy to see that it's come along. It was put on my lap, but it's also the CDBG funds. A small piece of that goes into this process, so it's actually been helpful to have it within the Urban Programs Department because it helps us align the timing better and requirements better. So when the agencies apply for this, what we need on the back end to determine CDBG eligibility is all in there. So I've had some benefit out of it as well, but everybody has been working very hard, and the current group is doing a great job getting up to speed and having really good opinions too, and understanding grants. I think a few of the commissioners that are on there now have a lot of grant background, so that's been very helpful.
That is helpful. Well, I think the process is that much better for having you in it, so thank you very much for that. Really
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think you, like Alderman Karen said, we brought it to a new level. I think one that we can be proud of as a city. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion to accept, place on file, and give the okay for this?
I'll make that motion.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
okay. Motion before us is to accept the changes as made and give the Community Commission, Citizens Advisory Commission for Community Grants the nod for this application. Further discussion, Carrie?
And those applications will be available this Friday, the 15th, both CDBG and this one. So.
Okay. Good news. Excellent. Somebody's got a lot of work to do to get this up and
Yes, they will be posted on the website.
very nice. Thank you so much. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
All right, good
Appreciate
evening.
all your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Carrie.
Unfinished business.
We have none.
New business.
We have none.
General discussion. I would like to thank Alderman Karen for her work, because she's been doing this for a long time. She's been in the trenches for many, many years, and really appreciate you sticking through this and giving us the feedback from the process and the commissioners and volunteers. So I want to thank you for that, Alderman Karen.
Thank you. I think that this is an important thing for the community as a whole, and whatever we can do as a group to get it where it is and to make it better, I think this is fabulous. I'm pretty proud of the fact that this group has worked so well in the last 3 years to really move this forward, and I can't say enough, having Carrie on there, because she's very dedicated to helping the commission get to where they need to go. So I appreciate it, and I thank you for the kind words.
You're very welcome. This whole process just reminds us of the safety net that we have out there of providers keeping our citizens who are less fortunate, viable in our community. So I think that's really, really important to remember. Any other discussion?
I would just echo your thank you to Alderman Karen. We appreciate your work.
We do. Public comment? No one here? Remarks by Alderman? Seeing none, no possible non-public. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Second.
motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned at 7:41. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.